Welcome to the X2 Biosystems Integrated Concussion Evaluation Training. Today we'll be going over the post-injury evaluation. To begin a post-injury evaluation, simply select on the athlete that you need to test. Once you have selected on an athlete, go to the upper right-hand corner of the application and select the action icon. You'll be prompted to perform one of the following tests, either a baseline or a post-injury. For our purposes today, we will be performing a post-injury exam. Simply select on the post-injury exam and the exam will populate. Make sure you have the correct athlete in the upper left-hand corner, and then you can begin your evaluation. Similar to the baseline, you will notice the blue chevron across the top of the screen. With the chevron, you can then go between different components of the exam, collecting information as you see fit. Today, we will briefly go through the post-injury exam, as we have spent a lot of time going over how to perform the baseline. To begin the evaluation, simply select when the assessment was performed and also when the injury was reported. You can add additional information or history information based on when the injury occurred and what was the mechanism of injury. You can either swipe from right to left or hit the next icon at the bottom of the screen. At this point, you will be reporting any potential signs of concussion. Was there any loss of consciousness? If yes, you'll be able to enter in how many minutes the athlete was unconscious. You will be able to enter in if there was any balance or motor incoordination, or if there was any disorientation or confusion. You'll be able to check and observe any blank or vacant looks. If there's any clutching of the head after the hit. If there are any visible facial injuries in combination with any of the above. If there was any memory loss, both retrograde and intrograde. If yes, you will then indicate that by using the wheel to indicate how long the athlete has had loss of memory. We then move on to the Glasgow Coma Scale. Because this was something that was baselined, you'll be able to see the baseline information provided on the right side of the screen. As you score the athlete, you will then be able to see their current score as well as their baseline score collected. This allows you the opportunity, as the clinician, to make sound judgment based on the athlete's status. Moving on to the Maddox component of the assessment. This component does not have a baseline to compare to. The Maddox is simple orientation questions that you would ask the athlete and make sure that they are aware of their surroundings and have good orientation. Remember to look for the large blue arrows that indicate what you should say and also what you should do. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Listen carefully and please answer as best you can. Ask the questions indicating with a check or an X if they get it wrong or right. Moving on to symptoms, you'll be able to find the large blue arrows that indicate what you should say. And as you move on, you'll be able to see that the baseline information is collected here on the right side of the screen. So as the athlete begins to tell you how they're feeling at this point in the evaluation, you'll be able to have this data to compare to the baseline on the right side of the screen. Once you've completed the symptoms component, you will then be able to ask if the symptoms get worse with physical activity or if they get worse with mental activity. You can see, as we've collected the information, that the athlete has a symptom score of 10 out of 22 and a severity score of 17 out of 132. Record your clinical impression and move on to the SAC scores. As you can see, we have the baseline information collected not only in a lump score, but also how they scored individually on the questions. Remember to ask and say the information provided, and then ask the questions collecting the information that they provide. With the word recall, you'll be doing the same exact process that you did on the baseline. You have the opportunity to alternate the word list, or you can have the word list provided on the screen. Remember to instruct the athlete. Here are how you should perform the exam, and collect the information once the athlete provides their scores. You will do the same thing for the digits backwards. I will collect some information to move on quickly. And then also with the months backwards. After you completed the SAC scores, you will be able to go into the coordination, balance, and neck examination. Perform your neck examination, checking the boxes of areas that the athlete has issues. If there are any issues, select on the text box and enter in your findings in clinical note form. The athlete has poor range of motion due to his head hitting the ground and his neck being very sore, period. He also has tenderness over his spinous and transverse processes. Save the note and then move on to the next component of the exam. We now moved on to the balance component where we'll perform the modified best. Remember to find the large blue arrows that tell you what to say as well as what to do. Notice that the baseline information is provided so you can know exactly how you performed this exam previously for this athlete. You will take them through the double leg stance, the single leg stance, as well as the tandem leg stance. Remember to look for errors as the athlete goes through the exam. Remember to start the timer and collect the information by selecting on the plus icon. Once you've completed the balance component of the exam, you will move on to the tandem gait. Here you'll be prompted to take the athlete through the 4 trials, having them walk heel-toe on a 3-meter line, turn around and come back to the start. They will have 14 seconds in order to perform this exam. Similar to the baseline, you will click the information. Once the athlete starts, you will look for issues or failures by stepping off the line. If the athlete separates between the heel and the toe, or they reach out and grab the examiner or an object. If they do any of those, you will simply mark that trial as failed. Perform this trial of walking tandem gait on a 3-meter line 4 times. It will capture the fastest score. Moving on to the finger to target. Again, position the iPad in front of the athlete and have the athlete reach out and touch the target. You will notice that the athlete was able to complete this on their baseline and has the information provided on the right side of the screen. The athlete is not able to touch their nose or misses their nose and touches their cheek, or is not able to perform this exam, you can simply mark it as failed. And then moving on to the last component of the post-injury, which is the delayed word recall. You will be prompted to ask the athlete if they remember the words that you provided earlier in the assessment. Please capture and indicate their scores in this section. Once you have done so, you can select Next, and you can see that we have now completed the post-injury assessment for Andrew Adams. When you pull up the summary, you'll be able to see that the athlete has a baseline in the system and that the post-injury scores are next to the baseline. You'll be able to see a visual representation of how the athlete scored both in symptoms, severity, and in BESS, and also see how they performed as a comparison from the baseline in the SAC scores as well as MADOX. Once you have completed the exam, you will be prompted to select the proper diagnosis for the assessment. You can, at this point, use your clinical judgment to remove the athlete from play via diagnosing them with a concussion, or they can continue to participate in full participation if you select no concussion. For today's purposes, we will select diagnose with a concussion. The examiner will then be prompted to then sign. The athlete will then sign, and you can then complete this component of the exam. You will now see that we have not only a baseline, but we have removed our athlete from play via diagnosis of the concussion. We have now plotted the second test within the system, an indication of a concussion, 3 self-reported. He has 1 baseline in the system and 1 injury assessment taken today. His availability has now gone from green available to orange out as a visual representation for the provider, healthcare provider, to make sure that the athlete is checked on daily as necessary. This completes the post-injury component of the ICE 3 exam.